Hello there. Tonight, I'd like to tell you a true story. One about a Vietnamese mother who carried rice to a mountain pagoda every day. But once, she carried something else, her son's remains, for 7 long days, through forests and enemy patrols, just to keep a promise she never got to speak. This is no legend. It's real, and perhaps, one of the most heartbreaking stories you'll ever hear. The wind in Ph Thong always smelled like guava leaves and wood smoke. In the early mornings, before the chickens even thought to crow, the world belonged to women like Bar, the lie she rose. Not because she wanted to, but because she had to. There was always rice to pound, water to carry, a child to raise. Her house sat at the edge of the village, half hidden beneath a banyan tree whose roots looked like arms trying to crawl home. A small clay stove, a patched mosquito net, a wooden altar with a photo of her late husband, a man who had died young, with too many dreams still clenched in his fists, and in the corner of the room, curled like a cat, was her boy T. He wasn't anything special, not a child from legend, not the son of a mandarin. He was just a boy with a chipped tooth, a laugh that came too quickly, and a strange tenderness for insects. He would spend hours crouching by the rice paddies, whispering things to crickets and ants as if they were elders. "Ma," he once asked, "do ants carry their dead like we do?" She had laughed, half amused, half unsettled. "No, but mothers carry their children for the rest of their lives." He didn't understand, not then. But he would. In those days, war was a rumor, something that happened in other provinces, told through whispered stories of men disappearing, of rice fields being set on fire by strangers who spoke Vietnamese with a different rhythm. But in Pha Thong, the days still began with birdsong and ended with frogs and rice. Always rice. Rice was more than food. It was tradition, burden, hope. B.Y. measured her life by sacks of rice, by how much she could carry before her knees gave in, by how many grains slipped through the cracks on the floor. She had been ganning rice since she was 14. The bamboo pole left permanent bruises on her shoulders, like tattoos only the poor wore. T learned early. He'd help her fill the sacks, tie the rope tight, and balance the pole before she set off. "Ma," he once said, as he watched her walk away into the haze of dawn, "one day, I'll carry rice for you, so you can rest." She didn't respond, because mothers know promises like that rarely get kept. But she held on to those words, like a stone in her chest at night. When the lantern was out and the insects sang their lullabies, T would press his ear against her back. "What are you listening for?" she asked. "Your heartbeat," he said, "to make sure you're still here." That answer startled her. She didn't show it. She just ruffled his hair and turned away. But that night, long after he had fallen asleep, she stayed up her hand over her heart, counting the seconds between beats. Years passed. The whispers of war grew louder. Men in uniform came through town. Some left behind leaflets, some left behind blood. And one day, the monks at the old pagoda on the hill began asking for rice, not for prayers, not for offerings, but for soldiers, hidden in the woods, preparing for the inevitable. The government didn't know, the French didn't know, but the villagers did, and Bar Belaishi volunteered. No one asked her to, she just appeared. One morning, carrying 2 sacks of rice, placed them on the pagoda steps, bowed, and left. No words, no fanfare, just rice. She began walking that trail every 3 days, 7 kilometers, each way, through swamp, heat, and suspicion. She told the guards at the checkpoint it was charity, alms for the monks. They laughed at her toothless smile and sun-darkened skin. "She's harmless," they said. They were wrong. Back home, T was changing. He grew taller, leaner. His eyes began carrying silence, the kind of silence boys wore before they chose a side. One evening, he approached her, his hands clenched. "Ma, I want to join them." She didn't pretend to misunderstand. "No, why not?" "Because I've already given everything I have, but you still have me." She slapped him, not hard, but with all the fear a mother could compress into a single act. He didn't speak to her for 3 days. On the 4th, she woke up to find his bed empty. A folded blanket, a crumpled shirt, a single line scrawled on palm leaf. "Paper, I'll build you that house with windows, Ma, I promise." She didn't cry. She just went to the river, washed his clothes, hung them to dry, and prepared the rice, because she knew the next time she carried it to the pagoda, it might feed her son. But war doesn't keep promises. It takes slowly at first, then, all at once, and as the sun set behind the hills of Ph Thong that year, a shadow began to grow. It would follow her for the rest of her life. It began with a dog's howl, one long, sorrowful cry that broke the stillness of dawn like a cracked gong dot in Vietnamese villages. People say animals know things before we do. They see what's coming, before the earth trembles bore, the leaves whisper bore, the blood spills. That morning, the villagers of Ph Thong looked at each other in silence, eyes wide with something they couldn't name. Even the chickens refused to crow. Asterisk smoke rose in the distance. Not the soft, curling smoke of hearth fires, but dark, angry plumes coiling into the sky like the arms of a ghost. T's younger cousin ran into the yard, barefoot and breathless. Ma Belai. The next hamlet burned down. They say the French came last night. Ba Belai dropped the gourd she was cleaning. It shattered on the stone floor, but her voice didn't tremble, only her hands. Is anyone hurt? They say some people didn't make it out. The men, they took the strong ones. The rest, no one knows. That evening, the sky turned the color of old blood. Ash floated down like dying butterflies. The river ran slower, as if mourning, even. The frogs stopped their chorus. She went to the pagoda. The next day, no rice this time, just her presence. The abbot met her at the gate. He looked thinner, his robe darker with sweat. You shouldn't come, Shu Belai, he said softly. There. Watching now, they burned Ph Long to make a point. What point? That no act of kindness goes unpunished. She stood in silence, then untied the scarf from her neck and pressed it into his hands. For whoever needs it more. She didn't wait for a thank you. She just turned and walked back, one foot after the other. The abbot watched her go, his fingers trembling over the fabric still warm with the scent of betel leaf and wood smoke. The rumors grew heavier. Whispers clung to walls like mold. They said a new commander had arrived in the province, young, ruthless, and eager to leave a legacy of ash. They said entire villages vanished. Overnight the people were tied to trees and left as warnings, that monks were tortured for hiding rice, that even children were no longer safe. But Belai did not flinch. She changed. Nothing still rose before dawn, still boiled water with ginger, still tied her scarf 3 times before ganning rice, but her face began to fold inward, like paper wet with sorrow. T's letters came less often, each one shorter. 1. Read only, do not send more. They are searching bags now. One of us was caught. Burn this. She didn't burn it. She sewed it into her, oh Baba, lining if anyone ever found it. They would find only stitches. But to her, it was the weight of 1,000 words unspoken. One night, she dreamed of rain, endless silver rain, and in it, T stood, barefoot holding his father's old rice bowl, except the bowl was cracked and leaking. Ma, he said, why won't you fix it? She woke up crying, but her eyes were dry. It was her body that cried, her bones, her joints, the soft meat of her back. They mourned in silence. Then the day came. The checkpoint had changed. New guards, new rifles. They stopped her halfway across. The bridge. What's in the sack? But rice. For whom? For monks. Which monks? The ones who chant louder than fear. They laughed. One pushed the tip of his gun into her sack. It sank deep. Rice spilled. Go ahead. She said, taste it. He didn't. He let her pass. But he followed her with his eyes longer than usual. That night, she hid her rice beneath layers of fish, sauce and garlic. Let the smell of rot protect the scent of defiance. She told no one, but the entire village felt it. Something had changed. The ground was no longer soft. The trees no longer whispered. Even the moon seemed to watch with narrowed eyes in the days that followed. The women stopped singing as they washed clothes by the river. The children stopped asking questions, and Ba Belai. She started to walk faster, not because of fear, but because she could feel time closing in, as if a clock inside. Her heart had started ticking louder than usual, and every tick was a warning. The path to the pagoda wound through a thicket of bamboo. That creaked like old bones when the wind blew. Villagers called it the Whispering Road, not because it spoke, but because it listened. Asterisk. It was here that secrets passed from one leaf to another, where lovers met in silence, where rice passed hands, heartbeats held tight in chests, and where Bab Belai walked, as always, barefoot and silent. That morning, she knew something was wrong. Not from the air. Not from the birds, but from the dogs. They didn't bark, they hid. Even the chickens huddled close to walls, as if expecting thunder. And in the distance, the bamboo wasn't whispering. It was shaking. The French arrived just before noon. 10 trucks, 50 men. Guns, boots. Foreign tongues. Commanding, barking, and among them, Vietnamese. Man in a beret, young, handsome, but his eyes were cold. Glass, we're looking for traitors, he said. We're looking for rice. They searched every home. They opened rice jars. They poked into water tanks. They turned over sleeping mats, like they were peeling secrets from skin. And when they reached the pagoda, they burned the prayer scrolls, laughed at the incense, slapped the monk who stuttered when asked about sacks. Where's your faith now? They said. Faith doesn't bleed, the young commander muttered. By sunset, the smoke rose higher than the bell tower. The village watched from behind. Closed doors, no one dared cry, but inside every woman. Something cracked, a thread of safety, cut clean. Barbalai was not home when they came. She was in the woods, watching from a patch of tall grass. Her gun lay beside her, still half full. She did not blink, did not breathe too loud, only clutched the small knife in her belt. Not for fighting, but in case she needed to cut her own path through the trees. That night, she did not go home. She slept beneath the shrine tree, where the wind sounded like her husband's voice before he died. She lit no fire, only held her knees to her chest and remembered how T once built a kite from banana leaves and string. Ma, he had said, if I fly high enough, will Ba see me? She hadn't answered then. Now, the question haunted her. The next morning, the village was quiet. Too quiet, not the peace of rest, but the silence of fear. She returned home and found her door broken. The jars spilled, clothes scattered, even her altar was overturned. Her husband's photo lay face down, cracked across the nose. She didn't scream, she just picked it up, cleaned the glass with her sleeve, and whispered, "We're not done yet." Later that day, the village elder gathered the women. A fire smoldered in the middle of the square. They'll come back, he said. This time, not just for rice, they're hunting names, faces. We should stop, someone said. We've done enough. They're threatening to burn the school, the pagoda, even our own homes. We have children. We have too much to lose. They all looked at Barbalai. She stood, arms crossed, face unreadable. Say something, a woman begged. Please. You've carried more than any of us. She looked up. Her eyes weren't angry. They were empty. You're right, she said. We have too much to lose. That night, she didn't sleep. She sat outside, staring at the moon. It was full, whole, UN, Botesh, EC, double quotes. Even the moon, she whispered, can disappear behind clouds and return. But if we disappear, who will come back for us? The answer came. From within, a voice not her own, not her husband's, but T's. Ma, don't stop. If you stop, they win. She stood, wrapped her scarf, lifted her G&H, and stepped back onto the bamboo path. The next day, the soldiers returned. But they found nothing. No sacks, no trails, only silence. They beat a boy, shot a duck, and left, but in the forest, beneath a mound of banana leaves, rice lay buried, waiting, and beside, eat a note, tied to a root with twine. You will not burn what you cannot see. It began with a single drop, then 10, then 1,000. The sky cracked open like a grieving chest, and the rain fell not gentle, but wild, urgent, like it had something to say. Barbalai didn't stop. Rain was no stranger. She had walked in storms, so fierce they bent bamboo sideways. This was nothing, just another veil between her and those who watched. The gan felt heavier in the rain. Rice absorbed water, the bamboo pole slicked with mud. Her shoulders screamed, but her face stayed still. The path was narrow today. The trees pressed in, every splash of mud. Behind her sounded like a footstep. She didn't dare look back. Somewhere in the hills, a bird shrieked, then a rustle. Not from leaves, from fabric, from boots. She froze. A voice behind her. Bakia, hung lay, Vietnamese, but sharp, clipped. A northern accent. Then, another voice, French, barking, angry. Quest, CE, Kelport. What is she carrying? She turned slowly, eyes low, face wet, not just with rain now, but with something colder. 2 soldiers, 1 Vietnamese, 1 French. They were young. Too young, the Vietnamese one held a rifle he wasn't used to. His hands trembled. Open the sacks, he ordered. She said nothing, just blinked through the rain. Murat. He barked again. Still, she didn't move. The Frenchman stepped forward, yanked. One sack open, inside fish bones, rotting vegetables, a pig skull. He recoiled in disgust. Elle est folle. He spat. She's crazy. She looked up, finally. You want food? She said, in a low, cracked voice. Here, eat. The Frenchman cursed, wiped his hand on his jacket, and turned away. The Vietnamese soldier stared at her. Long, too long, then quietly, go home. She didn't wait. She turned, walked, slowly, deliberately, like she hadn't just tasted death in the rain. She walked another 3 kilometers before her knees gave in. She collapsed by a termite mound, her hands bleeding. It was the first time. She cried, not for fear, but for shame for what she had buried before dawn in a banana. Leaf parcel, real rice, good rice. For the soldiers in the pagoda, she had hidden it in a hollow tree, praying no animal found it, before she returned. She reached the tree at dusk, unwrapped the bundle, still dry, still untouched. She kissed the packet, once, before moving again. The monks received the rice in silence. One of them bowed deeply. Shu. Jigita, Honshugin, Enheng, Aigin, Leibit, Lua, Linna, the. She smiled, a rare thing. It cracked her lips. Let them think I'm mad, she said. It keeps me alive. Back in the village, no one asked where she had gone, but one old woman whispered, it rained so much today, but the only mud I saw was on her hands. And the village remembered. Not her strength, but her silence. T's letter came 2 days later, delivered by a barefoot boy, folded into quarters. No envelope inside. In the scrawl of a boy becoming a man. Ma, I saw the clouds today and thought of home. If anything happens to me, don't cry. Just keep walking. The path only ends if you stop. She folded the letter, pressed it into her chest, and whispered to the rain, I won't stop, not yet. The morning was too quiet. Even the frogs kept their throats shut. The wind didn't move. The trees stood like statues frozen, listening, and then a knock, not on the door, on her chest, a feeling, deep in her ribs, like a drumbeat that came too early. At the edge of the village, a young man arrived, not a soldier, not a monk, but dusty, lean, with a limp in his right leg. He carried nothing but a bundle wrapped in coarse cloth, and eyes that didn't know where to look but. Barry saw him before he saw her. She knew, before a word was spoken, before the cloth was untied, before the name was whispered. She knew. Mother always knows. The boy bowed, but not fully, as if respect weighed too much. I'm from Battalion 3. What's left of it, he added. She said nothing. Her hands were already shaking. He knelt and slowly opened the cloth. Bundle. Inside a bloodied scarf, a torn sleeve with 3 letters sewn into the lining, a bamboo whistle, and finally a sliver of bone, small, almost clean, but unmistakably human. He didn't say it, didn't need to. Her knees gave out, but she didn't scream. She simply exhaled, and with it, something left her, something warm, something called hope. The boy reached into his shirt and pulled out a letter. Soggy, smudged, torn. He wrote this. Before the ambush. She took it, unfolded it with hands that had delivered rice, washed bodies, buried secrets, but never buried a child. Inside, Ma, if they get me, don't look for me. Burn my name if you must, but carry what I carried. And no, I never stopped thinking of your feet on that path. The way you walked, like it was the last thing that belonged to you. She folded it back, pressed it to her chest, and for the first time in her life, Baba Lai tore her scarf, right down the middle, a clean, violent rip. Not for mourning, not for drama, but because her heart had done the same, and no one could hear it but the cloth that the village gathered. No one dared ask what happened. They only saw the scarf, and they understood. One tear, one son, gone, that night. She did not light incense, she did not cry. She dug a hole beside the bamboo grove, placed the whistle inside, covered it with both hands, then sat there until the moon came and went. The next morning, she rose as usual, but instead of rice, she filled her sacks with salt and ashes. She walked to the pagoda, didn't speak. The monks opened the sacks. Puzzled, one reached for her hand. Shu, he's not coming back, she whispered, but I am. Later that week, Someone saw her at the river. Washing a new scarf, the same color as his blood. When asked why she died, it read, she said, "So when they shoot next time, I won't have to wonder woes it is." In the hills behind the pagoda, there was a patch of old bamboo, thick, ancient, green like time. No one walked there, too wild, too dense. But it was where she went that morning, with nothing but a dull knife, and a handful of ashes wrapped in cloth. The ashes were his, not from his body, that had been scattered by war, but from the scarf, the torn one, red, and soaked in what was left of him. She burned it herself, in silence, and now she was here to bury something that could never rot. She found a stalk. Straight. Tall. Still, breathing. Its green skin shimmered with dew, as if already morning. She knelt, placed the ashes at its base, then took her knife and carved 3 letters into the bark: T.Y. Not even his full name, just what she used to call out from the porch: TIVNCM. Ti Tune, Miyako, Ti Sai. The carving wasn't deep, just enough to mark, enough for the wind to read, and when it rained, she knew the water would run down those letters, carry his name into the soil, feed the roots so he would grow again. Not as a man, but as a song in the leaves. She sat beside the stalk, for hours, didn't speak, didn't move, only pressed her back against another tree and listened to the bamboo whisper, like it was praying or answering. When the sun dipped, she stood, brushed her hands, left the knife stuck in the dirt, a quiet monument, a weapon no longer needed. On her way back, she saw children playing by the creek, jumping, laughing, oblivious. One girl ran past her, stopped, stared. Bayai, so empty. Babu and Balai smiled, but not the kind of smile that lifts, the kind that remembers. "Because I forgot to forget," she said. That night, the village lit lanterns. Not for a holiday, not for joy, but because they had heard, word had spread. Her boy's gone. She buried him in the forest. No, she planted him. Number 1 asked for the truth. They didn't need to. They just watched her walk to the pagoda again the next morning. Same scarf, same steps, same silence. And somehow, everything she carried felt heavier to them than all the sacks of rice she'd ever lifted. One monk, quiet, followed her to the prayer hall, watched as she laid down her load. He bowed. "We should write his name on the temple wall." She shook her head. Names fade. Bamboo remembers. The clouds gathered, not above the mountains, but behind her back, in whispers, in silence, in side glances that stuck like thorns. She wasn't crazy, but they needed her to be. Because if she wasn't mad, then the world was. The well to women drew. Water. 1 leaned closer, voice low. She's still walking like nothing happened. Maybe she wants them to take her next. Or maybe she really did bury something else in those sacks. They didn't say it loudly, but not softly enough. But by heard that, she always heard, but she didn't stop drawing water, just let the rope burn deeper into her palm. At the market, an old man tried to sell her fish. She reached into her pocket for coins. He shook his head. "Keep it. I don't want ghost money." She placed the coins on the table anyway, then turned and left, leaving behind to Fishin a silence that stank worse than rot. That night, it rained again, the kind of rain that teased but never broke. Thunder rumbled, but no lightning. Like the sky was holding back the storm everyone else expected. She went to the bamboo grove again, not to cry, but to clean the base of the stalk. She wiped away dust, leaves, insect droppings, then sat beside it, speaking low. "They think I'm cursed. Maybe I am. But if I'm cursed for loving you, then let it be." The wind shifted. The bamboo swayed, just slightly enough, back in the village. A child fell ill, high fever, no clear cause. The mother, desperate, whispered, "It's because we laughed at her, because we pointed." Someone else added, "She buried her son under that bamboo. That's not a grave. That's a warning." The monk from before, young, quiet, the one with soft steps, visited her at dusk. He brought a bowl of warm rice, pickled vegetables, and a handful of salt. She accepted it. Wordlessly. As he turned to leave, he asked, "What does it feel like?" She looked up. "What? To carry a body and pretend it's just rice." She didn't answer at first. Then, lighter than guilt, heavier than memory. The storm that week never came. The skies growled, the wind rushed, but not a drop fell, and The villagers began to whisper. Again, she scared the sky. Even heaven doesn't want to cry for her. At the pagoda, the monks offered a prayer in her son's name. She stayed outside, didn't enter, didn't kneel, just stood under the fig tree, watching the incense trail into the clouds. He's not there, she whispered. He's not smoke, he's root. That night, a woman came to her home, carrying a child, fevered, pale eyes. Half shut, please, she begged. I mocked you, my son. He won't wake up. Barbalai stepped aside, let them in, boiled water, sliced ginger, wrapped the child in cloth she once saved for winter, and rocked him for hours, singing no song, only humming, like a mother who'd forgotten the words, but remembered the rhythm. The next morning, the child opened his eyes. The mother wept. Thank you, I'm sorry, I was wrong. Barbalai said nothing, only looked at her own hands, calloused, burnt, scarred, but warm, still warm, and as the woman left, villagers watching from behind their windows saw something they hadn't seen in years. Barbalai smiling, not from joy, but from peace. The kind of peace that only comes after you've buried the storm before it ever touches ground. The path to the pagoda had not changed. Same red dirt, same stones, same twisted roots that grabbed at her sandals like memories. But something was different that morning. The air too still, the birds too quiet, and the sack too heavy. She had carried heavier loads before, bigger sacks, soaked with rain, even bags of salt that leaked and burned her skin raw. But this one, this sack, it didn't just pull on her shoulders, it pulled on her chest, her breath, her spine, like it remembered something she had tried to forget. Halfway to the temple, she stopped, bent over, rested her hand on the sack, and then she heard it, soft but clear, "My Yai," a whisper, right by her ear. She stood upright, looked behind her. No one, just bamboo, mist, and that impossible quiet. She laughed once, dry and broken. Age plays games, she muttered, or maybe memory does. She lifted the sack again, walked on, 10 more steps then, Yai, closer. This time, from the sack itself, she dropped it, spun around, opened the cloth. Just rice, clean, white still but cold, like fingers. She knelt beside it, hands trembling. Tea. Nothing, only the wind. A dry rustle through dead leaves. She picked up a handful of rice, held it to her ear. Silence, and then, "Don't leave me again." She flung the rice down, fell back, breath heavy, heart wild. Was she dreaming, still asleep, or was finally mad? She laughed again, louder, until it became crying. A monk passing by found her there. On the ground, rice scattered, hair wild, shoe. "Are you hurt? Did someone?" She looked at him, eyes wide. He spoke. The monk blinked. "Who, my son, from the sack?" The monk hesitated, then sat beside her, carefully picked up a grain of rice, studied it. "Sometimes," he said, "grief climbs inside the things we carry. It waits, and when we're weakest, it speaks." She didn't answer, just stared at the sack, afraid to touch it again. The monk continued. "You have carried more than anyone should. Maybe it's not madness. Maybe it's memory, given a voice." That evening, she didn't go home. She stayed at the temple, sat beside the altar, watching candles flicker, one by one. The monks came, brought warm soup, blankets, a mat. No one questioned her, no. One asked why she didn't speak. They only lit an extra stick of incense that night for a name not carved in stone, but carried in Saxon voices. She dreamed that night, in the dream. She was ganning rice again. But the sack moved gently, not like something struggling, but like something breathing. "Ma, are we going home?" "Yes," she answered, "but we're taking the long way." She woke before dawn, eyes clear, hands steady, and for the first time in weeks, she picked up the ganwith. Shaking the sack was still heavy, but the weight felt like arms strapped around her. The river ran quietly that day, too. Quietly, even the frogs stopped croaking, as if nature itself was waiting, watching. She didn't mean to walk that way. It wasn't her usual path, but something tugged her feet, like an invisible thread, led her toward the edge of the muddy bank where the children used to play. And she once washed her boys' clothes, and there placed gently at the water's edge was a pair of shoes, not new, old, worn. The rubber peeled the canvas, faded, but unmistakable. They were his. Her breath caught. No. She knelt slowly, fingers trembling, traced the worn soles. She remembered sewing the loose thread. He was just 10, She remembered yelling when he stepped in pig dung. She remembered how he'd leave them outside, never caring if the rain soaked through. "Who put these here?" she whispered to the air. No answer, only a ripple on the water. As if the river, too, was remembering. She picked up one shoe, held it to her chest, and felt something inside, tucked deep in the toe. She reached in, pulled out a slip of paper, folded YELLOWED still. Dry dot. She unfolded it. No name, no address. Just 3 words. "I'm still walking." Asterisk, the world tilted. Was it a prank, a cruel joke? A message from someone who knew too much? Or was it from him? She looked around. No one. The wind didn't answer, but the current swirled oddly near her feet, like something, or someone, had just stepped away. She sat there for hours, shoes in lap. Eyes. On the horizon, the monks came looking for her, found her with the shoes, didn't ask. Just helped her up, walked her back, let her hold. Silence like a bowl of water to fall to spill. That night, she placed the shoes on her porch, faced outward, as if welcoming someone home, and left the slip of paper beside them. "If you're still walking," she whispered to the night, "this time I'll wait." By morning, the shoes were gone, but the paper remained, and on the back, new words had appeared. "Then wait with rice." She smiled, not out of madness, not out of peace, but because, for the first time since the sack, she had been answered. She carried a new bag that day. Lighter, not filled with rice, but with the shoes and the note. She placed them behind the altar at the pagoda and told no one, but every monk who passed by the altar. That week said they smelled wet grass and childhood, and one old monk, blind in both eyes, said he heard someone laugh. A boy's voice, echoing softly, "Ma I VNCM." There were many things in her house. Thoughts had no use anymore. The hammock, the second pair of chopsticks, the tin lunchbox with faded blue paint. But the one thing she never threw away was the old oil lantern. It was rusty, the glass cracked in one corner, the wick blackened from years of use. But it had been her son's. His last night home, he had lit it himself, saying, "So Ma doesn't trip in the dark." She hadn't, not that night. But after he left, she tripped on everything else. Grief, rumor, silence. Years passed. The lantern stayed unlit, until that night. It was raining, a stubborn, relentless drizzle, not violent, but persistent. She had just returned from the pagoda. Her hands smelled of incense, her shoulders still sore from the walk. She reached for the lantern on impulse, lit the wick, expecting it to flicker once, then die. But the flame held, steady, soft, like breath. She placed it on the porch, let it guard the night, and went to sleep at 3 a.m. She woke, no sound, no wind, only light, still there, still burning. She got up, opened the door. Rain still falling, but the lantern, dry. Untouched, like it sat beneath invisible shelter. Like someone was shielding it. She stepped closer, touched the glass, warm but not hot. Inside the flame, for a single second, she swore she saw his face. Not as he was in the coffin, not pale, not stiff, but smiling. Just a boy again, barefoot, cheek smudged with dirt, then gone. The flame danced, returned to normal. She whispered, "Tea. Are you cold?" No answer, but the lantern flared once, as if nodding. From that night on, she lit it every evening, and every morning. It was still burning. The villagers noticed at first. They thought it was routine, then superstition, then fear. "Lanterns can't burn through storms," one old man muttered. "Not unless something else is fueling them." One night, a woman drunk and angry kicked the lantern off the porch. It didn't shatter, it landed upright, still burning. No oil spilled, no glass broke. The woman sobered immediately, fell to her knees. "I'm sorry," she whispered. The lantern flickered, then steadied. Word spread. Soon people came to watch, not speak, just watch. They came with questions they didn't ask and left with answers they couldn't explain. One child asked her, "But, yea, who keeps it burning?" She smiled gently. "Someone who doesn't want me afraid." She moved the lantern to the temple steps. Let it glow for all, not just her, because grief shared became something else. Maybe hope, maybe healing, maybe memory, refusing to die. The monks wrote it into the prayer book. The flame that endures. Not as a miracle, not as a warning, but as a reminder that some bonds burn longer than oil. The lantern burned as it always did, night after night, storm after storm. But lately, something had changed. It wasn't just the flame. It was a small boy who noticed it first, a barefoot temple orphan named Vin. One evening, while sweeping leaves from the courtyard, he looked up as she passed. She walked slowly, as she always did, with the rice sack slung like memory across her shoulders. But something was missing. He blinked, rubbed his eyes, watched her move beneath the temple lanterns. No shadow, none. Not even a sliver, not under moonlight, not even when she passed the great fire basin. He dropped his broom and ran to the abbot Thai. Thai Yai, the woman she's. What is it, child? She has no shadow. The abbot stood slowly, eyes soft. He'd heard stranger things in his time, but this felt different. He stepped outside, watched her from afar, and yes, it was true, as the lanterns cast long golden shadows on the bricks, as even the smallest insect had its silhouette stretch underfoot. She had none, not a flicker, not a blur. She walked like a reflection a third from the mirror. The monks began to whisper, some in awe, some in fear. She's no longer one of us. She's halfway to the other side. Or maybe someone has taken her place. She heard the rumors, of course she did, but she said nothing, only smiled and kept walking. That night, she sat alone beside the pagoda pond. The moonlight lay across the water, like silver silk. She looked at her reflection. It was there clear, unbroken, but as she moved her hand, the reflection didn't follow. It remained still, staring at her, waiting. Are you me? She asked softly. Or are you the part I left behind? No answer, just a slow ripple as a koi fish stirred beneath. Behind her, a monk approached. The same old monk from before, blind in both eyes, yet somehow always seeing too much. He didn't. Sitdot just stood there, holding his prayer beads. You cast no shadow, he said. She nodded. Yes. Do you know why? No. Do you fear it? She smiled. At first. Now, I think maybe I gave it away. He tilted his head. To whom? To the sack, to the river, to the flame. You gave your shadow to grief. No, she said. To love. The monk was silent for a long while. Then he turned and left without a word. But as he passed, the petals on the Bodhi tree trembled. Even the blind can see what the heart already knows. The next morning, she returned to the market, for the first time. In years, not to sell, not to buy, just to walk. People turned their heads, not in scorn, but reverence. They saw her feet, but not the earth beneath them respond. She passed a puddle. No ripple, no reflection. She passed a fruit stand. No shadow against the wall. A woman dropped to her knees. Forgive me, she whispered. I mocked your lantern. The old mother touched her shoulder gently. I remember, she said, but I carry no anger, only rice. That night, she lit the lantern again, placed it on the pagoda steps, and as the villagers gathered in silence, a breeze blew through, yet the flame didn't move. It stood straight, like a spine, like a vow, and behind her, there it was, a shadow, but not hers, a small one, young barefoot. It stood beside her for a moment, then fadidento, the light. The villagers didn't speak for hours, but when they left rice at her door, and in every grain, a little piece of belief. It began with fog, not the usual morning haze, but a curtain thick, cold, and strangely quiet. She had taken a different path that morning. The forest trail behind the pagoda, once forbidden to villager scents, it was rumored to be a place where voices echo too long. But she wasn't afraid. Not anymore. The sack of rice rested on her back, but lighter than usual, perhaps because today, she wasn't just feeding monks. She was following something, or someone. The deeper she walked, the heavier the silence became. Even the birds refused to sing. The crickets held their breath, only the muffled thud of her footsteps, and the soft crunch of damp leaves. Then it came, a whisper, Ma. So soft, so close. She turned, nothing. Only fog, and the outline of trees, like bones. Ma, I. Clearer now, the voice of a child, a boy. Her knees buckled. T. No answer. She stepped forward, arms reaching into nothing. The mist parted slightly, revealing a small footprint in the mud. Barefoot, fresh dot, still warm when she touched it. She followed, one print, then another, each one smaller than the last, as if the boy were growing younger the further. She walked time-folded. The forest grew quieter until the only sound left was her own breathing and a heartbeat that wasn't hers. Then she saw him, just ahead. A boy, standing by a tree, his back turned, wearing the faded red shirt she had sewn when he was 5. The one with the crooked collar and a missing button. She couldn't move. Tears blurred her vision. But he turned, smiled, eyes wide, unchanged. Ma hem cm cho kan h. Her lips trembled. Ma hem cmvan sigh. He stepped closer, his hand outstretched, so small, so real. She reached for him, but the moment their fingers touched, he dissolved, asterisk-like breath on a mirror. The mist swallowed everything, even her scream. She collapsed to the ground, clutched the rice sack, held it like a child, and wept, for minutes, or hours, or years. She couldn't tell when she finally opened her eyes. The forest was clear, no fog, no voice, no boy, only a small wooden tag, hanging from a low branch. She took it down. Burnt into the wood were the words, "I'm not lost, I'm just waiting." She returned to the pagoda, didn't speak for 3 days, didn't eat, didn't sleep, only lit the lantern, and placed the tag beneath it. That night, one of the monks approached her. "You went into the fog," he said. She nodded, and came back. She looked at him, eyes hollow, only halfway. The monk said nothing. But when he returned to his chamber, he wrote in his journal, "She walks both roads, now between the living and the lost." From that day, the fog came more often, but only for her, only when she walked, and always the soft whisper, "Ma." He was a quiet monk, the kind who didn't speak unless spoken to, young, with soft eyes, and a voice barely louder than the sound of rain on leaves. His name was Min Tam. He had been at the pagoda for 4 years, sweeping, chanting, serving rice too. The poor he had seen her come and go many times. The old woman with the lantern, and the silent feet. But he had never spoken to her, not once, until the dreams began. The first one came gently. He was standing on a hillside, golden. Rice fields stretched in every direction, the sun so bright it hummed, and there walking along the narrow, dirt path was a girl. Not the old woman, a girl. She couldn't have been more than 16. Bare feet worn, bar, a woven hat tilted over her eyes. She was humming a lullaby, faint, but familiar, and on her back a sack of rice. He woke with sweat on his palms, heart racing, unsure why, the next night. The dream returned, same hill, same girl, same song. But this time, she turned, smiled. Her eyes were old, too old for her face. He spoke. "To the abbot Thai, I've been dreaming." The old man looked at him over his tea. "That is not a sin. But it's her who are the woman, the rice carrier. But she's young." The abbot closed his eyes, breathed deeply. Then, "You're not dreaming. You're remembering something that never belonged to you." He didn't understand, but he kept dreaming, night after night. One evening, in the dream, she stopped, looked at him directly, and said, "You weren't supposed to see this." He woke with a gasp, sweat soaking through his robes. He went to her hut. For the first time, the lantern was still burning, as always, but the air around it shimmered, like heat or memory. He stood outside, unsure. But then she spoke from inside. "You saw me, didn't you?" He stepped closer. "Yes." She opened the door. Face calm, eyes quiet. "Then it's time." She invited him in, sat him down, poured tea. No one else was there. No ghosts, no illusions, just 2 people, with too many lives behind their eyes. "What did you see?" she asked. "You, young, carrying rice, singing." "Did you hear the words?" "No, only the tune." She nodded. "It's a song my mother sang before the war. I haven't sung it in 60 years. Silence. Then he asked, "Why am I seeing it?" She looked into her tea. "Because you are the only one still listening." He didn't understand, but he felt it deep in his bones. She stood, walked to the altar, lit a stick of incense, then turned. "Next time you dream, ask me what I buried." "Why?" "Because not all rice sacks carry food." That night, he slept deeply, and dreamed again. Same path, same girl, but this time, when he approached her she turned, held something out, wrapped in cloth, heavy, wet. "Ask me," she said, "what did you bury?" He whispered. She unwrapped it slowly, inside a child's sandal, stained, dark, torn at the edge. He woke sobbing, and for the first time in 4 years, the bell rang at the pagoda in the middle of the night. Not because of death, not because of fire, But, because one soul had remembered what another had never forgotten. They first heard it during the rains, a sound soft, broken, like someone quietly crying behind closed doors. At first, the monks thought it was the wind, the way it curved through the bell tower, sometimes whistling, sometimes sighing. But this was different. It was human, and unmistakably small. The novice monk, Thian, barely 16, heard it first. He had been sweeping near the back halwan. He paused, broom still midair. "Who's there?" he whispered. No answer, only the sound of weeping, faint, but close. He followed it to the storeroom, lit his oil lamp, swung the door open, empty, except in the far corner, a lone rice sack sat on the floor, tightly tied, but trembling. He backed away, eyes wide. By the time he told the abbot, the sound had stopped, but it came again the next night, and the one after that, each time from a different corner of the temple, each time from a different sack. Some monks laughed it off. Too many ghost stories before bed. It's just rats. But the older ones stopped sleeping deeply, and the youngest began leaving their robes in piles, just in case they needed to run. She knew, of course. She had heard it too, but she didn't run, didn't flinch, just listened, and whispered back, "I know you're still there." One night, she went to the main hall, placed a rice sack at the center, kneeling beside it. She lit 3 sticks of incense, closed her eyes, waited, and slowly, it began. Not just weeping, but a voice, a child's voice. "My ng. Bien Khan." Her hands trembled, but she did not open her eyes. Instead, she sang the same lullaby from her dreams, the one with no name. But every mother knew. The crying grew softer, then stopped. Only the smoke of incense seemed. A gentle warmth in the room remained. She opened the sack. Rice, nothing else but the top layer, shimmered with something. Wet. Like tears. Or memory. The next day, she met the young monk, Thian. He stood with a worried look, glancing back at the storeroom. "They say the sack is cursed," he said. She smiled gently. "No, just lonely." "Why does it cry?" She looked up at the Bodhi tree swaying in the breeze. "Because it remembers something no one dares speak." She began sleeping beside the rice sacks from then on. Each night, a different room. Each night, a different song. The monks watched from a distance, how the crying stopped when she arrived, how the sacks no longer trembled, but seemed full of breath. The abbot came to her one night. "What are they?" She looked down at her hands, old, calloused, but strong, fragments, pieces, echoes, of what I couldn't carry in daylight. The monks started writing new prayers, not to Buddha, not to spirits, but to the unnamed. Children Woe's voices rose from sacks of rice. The temple began filling with offerings, not gold, not incense, but tiny sandals, wooden, toys, stitched handkerchiefs, laid gently beside the rice bags, as if saying, "You are not forgotten." She smiled. Her job was not yet done, but for the first time in decades, she no longer walked alone. It began with thunder, a storm that cracked open the sky, clouds bruised black, winds howling like ghosts with unfinished stories. The villagers bolted shutters, the monks tied down the prayer flags, and all around the temple, leaves spiraled like lost spirits. But amidst the chaos, one thing stood unmoved. Her lantern, that little flame, sitting by her door, in its clay case of soot and scratches. It should have gone out, it always did, in storms like this, but not today. The abbot noticed first. He was closing the prayer hall when he looked across the courtyard and saw the orange flicker, small, still, alive. Hours passed. Rain flooded the garden paths. A tree cracked in half by lightning. The bell tower moaned under the wind, but the lantern burned. The monks gathered at the windows, watching, whispering, double quotes, "How it's just oil and wick. It should be drowned by now. Maybe it's not the lantern that burns." She sat beside it, eyes closed, face calm as if she didn't hear the storm at all. At midnight, a gust tore the roof tile above her. A violent screech. Yet she didn't flinch, didn't move, only reached one hand forward to steady the lantern. It pulsed once bright, then settled again. The wind recoiled at dawn. The sky opened, sunlight poured down like forgiveness, and the storm retreated, muttering its last growls. When the monks stepped out, they found her lantern still lit, the ground around it dry, not a drop of rain. On its clay base, she finally spoke. "He used to light it, you know." They looked at her. "Who?" "My son." before he left. He said as long as it burned, he'd find his way home. One monk stepped closer, but he never returned. She nodded, double quotes. Not in the way we hoped, but he comes back, in dreams, in rice, in tears, and in flame. The abbot knelt beside her. This lantern, ... It's not just yours, is it? She smiled. No, it belongs to every mother who never had a body to bury. From that day on, the monks stopped trying to shield the lantern. They let it burn, through rain, through wind, through time. It became a pilgrimage. People came from nearby villages, brought photos, old shoes, letters, never sent, laid them gently at the base of the lantern, ... and wept. They called it the flame that waits. Some nights, the monks swore they saw shadows near it. A boy, sometimes laughing, sometimes sitting quietly, head resting on his mother's lap. But when they blinked only, the lantern remained, still burning, always burning. And in the temple records, the abbot wrote, the Buddha teaches us to release attachment, but some flames are sacred, not because they cling to pain, but because they remember love. In the temple storeroom, rice came and went like the tides, brought in by villagers, weighed, counted, distributed. Some bags fed the hungry, some went to distant monasteries, others simply vanished into the rhythm of giving. But one sack remained, small, tightly knotted with red thread, marked only with the faint scent of smoke and soil. It had been left by her. The woman with the lantern, ... left behind with no explanation, no name tag, no offering note, just a whisper to the abbot, this one doesn't need to be eaten. The monks, respectful, placed it in the far corner, away from damp, away from rats. But as months passed, they forgot it, until one day, during an inventory check, young monk Thion pulled it out. Still full, still fragrant. He frowned. This is from last harvest, isn't it? Longer than that, said the older monk. I think it's hers. They opened the knot and froze. The rice was warm. Not from the sun, not from the room, from within. They poured some into a wooden bowl. No mold, no moisture, not a single discolored grain. They ran tests, boiled a few spoonfuls, served it plain, and when they ate it, they cried, all of them. Even those who hadn't wept in years. Not from sadness, but from memory. They tasted something they didn't know. They had lost a fire, a lullaby, road with bare footprints. The abbot summoned her. What is in this rice? She smiled, touched the bag gently. Only what I carried. But it's impossible. Rice spoils. Time ruins everything. Her eyes didn't leave the sack. Not if time is afraid to touch it. The monks began calling it living rice, not for miracles, not for superstition, but because it remembered, because it wept, because it warmed the hands that held it. Villagers came to see. Some touched it and gasped. Others swore they smelled the breath of someone long gone. A few fainted, overwhelmed by sudden visions. A river, a boy's laughter, a woman walking into fog with a bundle on her back. The temple had to move it, not to hide, but to honor. They built a small glass case, placed it under the Bodhi tree. Visitors left folded notes, like prayers tucked into its folds. She visited once a week, sat silently before it, spoke no words, only touched. The glass whispered, Ma vien con que. One evening, a stranger came, worn boots, scarred hands, eyes like stone. He asked no questions, only stared at the rice, then said, I fought with her son, he saved me. He said his mother carried him through hell, and the man wept, not like a soldier, not like a stranger, but like a boy finally allowed to go home. From then on, the temple kept a single bowl of the receipt, every memorial, not for offerings, but for remembrance. A promise that even if your body is ash, your warmth still feeds us. In the village, children began to say, she doesn't carry just rice anymore, she carries time. And every harvest season, the monks blessed the new grain bee, touching it to the old, sarcasking it to remember, to be more than food, to be a story. The stone path to the pagoda had seen generations, carried monks, pilgrims, children, chasing kites, old men chasing memories, but no feet had ever worn it, down, ... until her. The first grooves appeared during the 3rd year of her visits, just after monsoon season. Thin lines etched like brushstrokes into the earth, soft, unmistakably human. No one noticed at first, but one dawn. A novice monk, sweeping the courtyard, paused mid-motion. Dust rose in thin swirls beneath it. Mud tracks, small, precise, Not from the monks, not from the villagers. They were too early to dry. Aligned. They led from the village potato, the storeroom. To the rice sack under glass, and stopped. The boy looked around, shouted, double quotes, who walked here in the rain? But there had been no rain, only the scent of smoke and jasmine. The abbot examined them next, traced them with his fingertips, then slowly looked up at the Bodhi tree as if it had whispered something. More footprints came the next week, fresh, always, appearing before dawn, never overlapping, and always stopping just before the rice. Some monks grew fearful. Ghosts, they whispered. She's gone too far. She's disturbed something. But the abbot disagreed. No, he said, she's awoken something. They watched her more closely after that. Not with suspicion, with awe. Because no matter where she walked, the earth remembered. One night, during Lantern Festival, a sudden rain came. Lanterns floated down river. Candles sputtered. People ran for cover. But when dawn broke, the monks found a line of muddy footprints stretching from the gate to the main altar. Even in rain, even in darkness, the path remained. A visitor from the city scoffed. Coincidence, he muttered. Rain always brings prints. But when he stepped on the same path, his shoes left no mark. They tried sweeping it. The grooves remained. They tried washing it. Still there, only. When she paused her visits for a month of fever that kept her home, did the marks fade, like breath? Leaving glass, she returned on the first day of the new lunar cycle, old, tired, but steady. She carried no sack that day, only a small flower, a single jasmine bloom, wrapped in cloth. She laid it beside the rice, and walked away. The next morning, not only were the footprints back, but the scent of jasmine lingered for days. Even the dogs refused to bark, as if the earth itself was holding its breath. The villagers began calling it the silent procession. Some said it was her son. Others believed it was the rice itself, moving. One monk whispered, no, it's love. Love that refuses to lie still. They began marking the path with lanterns, with flowers, with incense. Not to cleanse it, but to honor it. Children ran along it in silence, pretending to carry sacks. Women laid rice grains beside the grooves. Old men bowed before stepping across, and at the very end of the path, by the rice, they engraved a small stone. Here walked the woman Woe, taught the earth to remember. It was the last day of the 7th lunar month when she stopped coming. No illness, no letter, no goodbye, just silence. The monks waited. They swept the path, lit incense beside the rice sack, prepared a warm bowl of tea. But the woman didn't return. 3 days passed, then 7, then 15. The village grew anxious. Had she moved? Had something happened? No one knew, but every dusk, someone would glance at the Bodhi tree, half expecting to see her frail form sitting quietly beside the rice. Then came the 20th day. A young monk walked past the storeroom just as the sun dipped. Behind the hills, and there cast long on the stone wall was a shadow, thin, still sitting, cross-legged beside the rice case. He rubbed his eyes, looked around. No one there, just the shadow, and the scent of smoke and salt. He ran to the abbot. Together they returned. The shadow remained. Same posture, same outline, hair bun and all. What is this? The monk whispered. The abbot didn't answer, just bowed his head and murmured a prayer. Each evening after that, the shadow returned. Only at sunset, only beside the rice. Villagers came to see. Some brought candles, others wept. One woman fainted upon seeing it. That's her. That's how she sat every time. I swear it. Photographs were taken, but in every image, the shadow never appeared. Only those who stood in person could see it. Children grew afraid. It's a ghost. She died and didn't move on. But the elders shook their heads. No, she's still alive, but a part of her stayed. The monks debated, should they bless it, banish it, protect it? The abbot said simply, let it be. Some shadows are not cast by light, they are cast by love. One dusk, a small boy approached the shadow, kneeled beside it, placed a rice cracker where its hands would be, then sat, waited, and smiled. She's warm, he said later. I didn't see her, but I felt her. Word spread. Pilgrims arrived, not to see miracles, but to sit beside the shadow, to confess, to cry, to remember someone of their own. Letters were left. One read, "Ma, I miss you. I hope you're somewhere peaceful. But if not, I hope you're here." Another said, "I never said thank you. This is my thank you." Sometimes, the shadow seemed to shift slightly. A tilt of the head, a flicker at the edge of the rice case, but no one ever saw it move. Then one day, she returned, just as quietly as she had left. No fanfare, no explanation, only a jasmine bloom in her hand. The monks bowed, she bowed deeper, and the abbot said, "You left a part of yourself behind." She looked toward the wall where the shadow once lingered. It was gone, but she nodded. It wanted to rest. I had to let it. That evening, the shadow did not return. In its place, a faint golden glow reflected off the rice, as if something had lifted, and stayed. From then on, at every sunset, the temple would ring one bell, not for prayers, not for endings, but for presence. They called it the hour of the quiet shadow. And sometimes, just sometimes, when the wind was soft and the rice was warm, visitors claimed they saw her, not as a shadow, not as a ghost, but as a light, sitting beside the rice, still watching, still waiting, still loving. It was a night of cold rain. He arrived, no name, no greeting, just a silhouette under a soaked straw hat. Standing at the gates of the pagoda, the novice monk opened the door. The man didn't speak, only extended his hand, offering something wrapped in old cloth. Inside was a wooden comb, cracked, worn smooth at the edges, but carved along its spine were 3 faint characters. "Thou lion," her name. The monk froze, eyes wide. "Where did you get this?" The man didn't answer. He bowed and walked inside. The abbot met him in the inner hall. The man sat on the floor, removed his hat, rain trickled from his chin. His face was tired, too young to carry such old eyes. He placed the comb before them. "I owe her," he finally said. His voice was low, dry like cracked bamboo. "I was 19, lost in the jungle, bleeding from the leg, chased by dogs. I thought I'd die. He found me, her son. Didn't know me, didn't ask who I fought for, just carried me on his back for miles." He paused, eyes trembling. "He had a necklace with this comb. Said his mother used it every morning. Said she'd never forgive him if he left it behind." The monks listened. No one spoke. "When we were caught in the ambush, he handed it to me. If I don't make it," he said, "bring this back to her. Tell her I walked straight. Tell her I wasn't cold." Then he stood up, ran in the other direction, led them away. I never saw him again. The abbot took the comb, held it as though it were glass. He looked at the rain outside. "You came far." The man nodded. "I didn't know where to go until I dreamed of this place." She was standing under a tree, holding a bowl of rice, smiling. But the bowl was empty. The monks brought him tea, dry clothes, a warm mat. They told him to rest, but he refused. "I only came to return it. She deserves to keep what's hers, and maybe I'll stop waking up crying." They said she wasn't at the temple, that she only came once a week now, that she might not even return this month. But he waited for 3 days. He sat beneath the Bodhi tree, spoke to no one, ate only what was given, each night. He lit a candle beside the rice sack, and stared at it as if waiting for something to speak back. On the 4th morning, she came, wearing her faded scarf, her back slightly more bent, but her hands still steady. She saw him, paused. Her eyes landed on the comb in the monk's hands, and she dropped her lantern. The clatter echoed. No one moved. He stood, approached, slowly. Neil led, held the comb out with both hands. "He saved me," he said. "You'd understand." She took it, with fingers that trembled, but did not break. She traced the carved name. Tears fell silently, not in sobs, but in streams, like a monsoon that had waited too long to arrive. "He always said I brushed too hard," she whispered. "But he never left without letting me do it." She turned to the monks. "This man, he carries my son's last warmth. Feed him, give him rest. Let him carry nothing more." That night, she sat beside the rice sack, held the comb, and for the first time in years, hummed a lullaby, one she hadn't dared sing since the day she carried that final weight up the mountain. Visitors said the air smelled of rain and bamboo, and when the wind blew, they heard 2 voices humming, not one to dot. The lantern was old, handmade, bent slightly at the neck, with faded red paper, flaps that fluttered like the wings of a moth in wind. It had hung by her door for as long as anyone remembered, and every night she came to the temple. She carried it, lit. Some said it was a habit. Others said it was for her son, so his spirit could find her. But no one knew that she never let the flame die, not once, not even during the monsoons. Even when her back ached, even when her steps faltered, she cupped the flame with her palm, whispering words as if it were a child she was carrying again. The monks began calling it the widow's star. It had become part of her, like her scarf, like her silence. Then came the long winter. Winds swept through the hills. Fires went out in the hearths of the richest homes, but not hers, not her lantern. One night, a monk passing by her home saw the light, still glowing, soft, golden. Unmoving. Even as trees swayed and shutters slammed. He knocked, no answer. He entered. She was not there, but the lantern was still lit, still warm. He waited and waited, but she didn't return. Morning came. Still no sign of her. Yet the lantern glowed on. News spread quickly. People came, whispered, watched the little red flame. That refused to flicker. By the second day, dozens had gathered. They left offerings of oil, but no one touched the lantern. No one. Dead on the third day, a traveler from another province arrived. Said he had heard of the miracle. Said he didn't believe it. He reached out to lift the lantern and burned his fingers. But the flame did not grow hotter, did not flare. It simply stayed. That evening, she returned, carrying nothing. No rice, no shawl, just her hands. Empty. She walked past the crowd and entered her home. Saw the lantern, nodded. Double quotes, I told you. She said I wouldn't be long. Someone asked, where did you go? She only replied, to find what I left behind. Then she reached up, held the lantern gently and blew. But the flame did not go out. She tried again, and again it flickered, but never died. She laughed softly. So he's still here. The abbot arrived later that evening. He studied the lantern, listened to her story, then said, let it burn, it knows what it's doing. So they moved the lantern to the temple gate, hung it high where the wind could sing to it. Bet never steal it. From then on, the villagers no longer brought incense. They brought lanterns, hung them around the courtyard, lit from the widow's star, each flickering light a vow not to forget. And every evening, when dusk dipped the hills in violet, the temple glowed not with gold but with red warmth, carried by one flame, one stubborn little lantern that refused to go out until she said so. The first time it happened, the monks thought it was a mistake. They placed a full sack of rice beside the altar, before sleeping, a donation from a kind traveler. But by sunrise, it was gone, vanished, not spilled, not stolen, just not there. No signs of tampering, no rats, no footprints. Only a small piece of cloth, left in its place. A strip of blue linen, frayed at the edges, the kind women used to wrap bundles in the old days. They asked around. The villagers hadn't seen anyone enter. The gates were locked. No sounds in the night, only the occasional rustle of trees. They checked the STOREROOMS, all intact, but the sack that had been left in the open temple hall was simply gone. On the second night, they tested it. They placed another sack, this time hidden a little, marked it with ash, that left a candle burning nearby. Then they waited. Dawn came. The candle had burned out, and the rice gone again. This time, a faint trail of rice grain stilled to the doorway, but only halfway, then stopped. In its place was a note, scrawled in old clumsy handwriting. Where there is hunger, I walk. Whispers spread. Some said it was a thief. Others claimed it was her son's spirit, feeding the poor from beyond. But the monks, they said nothing, only lit incense, and prayed. By the third time, it was no longer strange. People began leaving rice deliberately at the pagoda, not for the monks, not for blessings, but for that silent mission. Sometimes it was bags, sometimes just a handful, wrapped in banana leaves, old fabric, even inside bamboo tubes, and always, by morning, gone. No one ever saw who took it. But rumors grew. A beggar girl, clamaged, saw a woman in a faded scar, carrying rice down the mountain at twilight. A farmer swore he found warm rice at his doorstep after praying for food the night before. One child, sick and weak, said a lady touched his forehead at night and left behind a bowl of porridge. When his mother asked what she looked like, he pointed to a sketch of her, the rice widow. The temple, overwhelmed by attention, began calling it the silent giver. And every week, at least one sack would go missing without trace. No locks broken, no gates opened, just rice vanishing into need. Then, on the 7th week, they found something new. Not an empty floor, but a pair of straw sandals, dusty, still warm placed beside the altarus. If someone had just walked in and walked out barefoot. The abbot held them in silence. She walks far, he finally said, and she's not done yet. They built a small shrine beside the main hall. Nothing grand, just wood, cloth, and a single rice bowl. Every evening, someone placed a fresh handful, and each dawn it disappeared. They never called it magic. They called it the walk that never ended. And though she grew older, and came to the temple less and less, her footsteps never truly stopped. Sometimes, late at night, a bell would ring once. No wind, no monks nearby, just one soft chime, as if someone had passed by in quiet feet, carrying something. Precesento, the dark. It was an early morning in spring, when the air smelled of burnt grass and old incense. A monk, sweeping the front steps, noticed something fall from the rice sack just delivered to the temple. A folded piece of paper, yellowed, brittle, smelling faintly of smoke and sandalwood. He picked it up gently, unfolded it. On the page were faint markings, brushstrokes that danced like rivers blurred. The ink hadn't smudged. It was as if the words themselves refused to settle, like fog in sunlight. He brought it to the abbot. Together they tried to decipher it. They used magnifying glasses, held it under the morning sun, even whispered prayers. But no matter what angle they read it from, the words shimmered, then dissolved. Only one thing remained clear. At the bottom of the page, in bold and jagged strokes, Ma Yai, Mother, ... closing parenthesis. The old woman was called to the temple. They handed her the letter in silence. She didn't ask questions, didn't blink. She held it in her hands, bowed her head, and wept. He always said he'd never write, said his words would come out wrong. But that day, she unfolded it, looked at it with tired, weathered eyes, and unlike the monksy, began to read aloud. Her voice, cracked but clear, rose through the temple like the smoke of morning rice. Ma Yai, Nu Con Kang Va, Tha Ma Hung Ji, En Heng Con Bit, Ma Vien, Sen Gan, Gan Luen, Si Zak Khan, Niu Tre Bt, Ma Fi Khan, En Shen Lane, Hu, Theo Gi, Ta Sai, Ma Cm Chan, Con Kok, Nurtrok Khan, Ma Gien Khan, En Heng Khan, Ma Gien Khan, Sa Khan, V Khan Sai, Cho, Ma, Mang Toi Vivi Long, New Bo Gig Khan Chat, Shin Ma Hung, Bien Go, Vien Wai Hao Ko, Cheek Sn Ko, Ai Goi, Chong Kon Enge, Chen Theo, Cash Meng. When she finished, she folded the letter again, pressed it to her forehead, and did not speak. The monks stood in silence. Some cried, others turned away, but none could explain how she had read words no one else could see. They asked her later, what did it say? She smiled, soft, faint, like someone remembering the scent of a lost blanket. It said what all sons want to say. From that day forward, whenever a new sack of rice appeared, they searched it carefully. Sometimes there were petals, sometimes there were buttons. Once, even a small wooden whistle. All reminders, all fragments of a life once carried and still carrying. The letter was placed inside a glass case. Hung beside the shrine. No words visible, just a blank page. But those who came, who truly listened, said they heard whispers when the wind blew through the hall. Not ghosts, not spirits, but a son writing to his mother. Across time, the bell at the mountain temple was never rung without reason. It tolled at dawn to summon monks, at dusk to signal prayer, but never in the hours between midnight and first light. That space belonged to silence, to breath, to dreams, to the unseen. Until one night, a sound shattered it. Gong. Soft, deep, lonely. Once it came at 3:03 a.m. No wind, no footsteps, no figures in the courtyard. Just the echo of that single striker rolling through the hills like the voice of a long-forgotten ancestor. The abbot rose, lit incense, checked every hallway. No one was awake. The bell cord, still tied, still unmoved. He said nothing the next day, only bowed longer than usual during morning chants. The following night, they watched two monks hid near the bell tower. Another stayed in the prayer hall. All lights out, no movement. Then gong again, this time twice. Gong gong. The monks ran to the tower. Nothing. Cord still hanging, bell, unmoved. But it had rung, and they had heard it. The village stirred. Rumors began. Was it a warning, a spirit, or someone from the war finally returning? Then came the third night. This time, it rang 3 times. Gong, gong, gong. And this time someone saw. A young novice, hiding under the eaves, glimpsed a figure, not glowing, not floating, just walking, a woman barefoot, carrying a single sack on her back, and as she passed the bell tower, the bell chimed us. If bowing to her, he did not shout, did not run. He watched her fade into the forest trail, lantern in hand, and when the dawn came, he told the abbot, she's still walking, Thigh. She never stopped. The abbot only nodded. Then let us listen. From that day, the bell became a sacred thing. Not a call to prayer, but a message. Each toll at night was read like a scripture. 1 ring meant, I've delivered rice. 2 rings meant, there's hunger nearby. 3 rings meant, I've found someone who remembers. The people began leaving Bolsat. Their doorsteps whenever the bell rang dot, and by morning, some bowls were empty, others were warm, and a few had poems written on palm leaves stuck. Underneath, not every house received, not every prayer was answered, but none were ignored. The woman, no longer seen by most, was still believed in, like a wind that never changes direction, like a scent that lives in a room long after the candle has died. They called the bell the voice of the mountain. And each night, as the stars blinked open, people listened, not with ears, but with memory. One old man whispered, when I was a boy, I saw her once. She gave me rice wrapped in lotus leaves. I forgot the taste, but I never forgot her hands. And so, the legend grew. But more than a legend, rhythm. A promise in 3 chimes. A map of compassion drawn in sound. The rain arrived, like grief silent at first. Then overwhelming, by dusk, the skies collapsed. Clouds burst like old wounds, pouring themselves into the world below. Paths vanished under torrents. Rivers frothed with rage. Homes on stilts creaked and groaned, as if whispering their final prayers. The villagers gathered whatever they could carry. Old charms, sleeping children, worn-out hope. One by one, they climbed toward the only place left, the temple on the hill. Its bells had long rusted quiet, but tonight it was their ark. At dawn, a boy's voice pierced the morning hush. There's someone in the flood. Heads turned, eyes squinting through the rain still falling like ash. A figure emerged, not floating, not flailing, but walking. A woman, bent low, a bundle strapped to her back, wrapped in oilcloth. Water clawed at her hips. But she moved like memory, slow, certain, unstoppable. Come back. Someone shouted, but she didn't. She wasn't walking toward safety, she was walking toward the hill, toward the temple, toward the only place that remembered who she was. The stone steps were buried now, but her feet knew where they should be. A monk tied a rope to his waist and plunged down. Others held tight. He reached her as her legs gave out. She collapsed. The bundle slipped from her back. Not rice, not food, but a body, or what was left of one, wrapped in faded silk, bones the size of a child's laughter. They took him from me. She whispered, years ago, threw him in the river like he was nothing. I waited. Every year when the floods came, I watched N. This year, the water gave him back. They carried her inside, gave her warmth, offered dry robes. She refused. Instead, she knelt before the altar, unwrapped the bundle, bathed the bones in rainwater and tears, and sang the lullaby that had lived in her chest for 40 years. When the song ended, so did the storm. The sky broke open, and the light fell gently. As if ashamed of arriving late, no one spoke, no one dared. From that day forward, they no longer called her the Rice Woman. They called her the one who walked through water, a mother not of one child, but of all loss, a ghost in flesh, a miracle in mud at the foot of the hill. They carved her in stone. No gold, no inscription, just her Schaefer woman hunched with a bundle on her back and her eyes facing skyward. The rains had gone, but something lingered. The fields lay flattened, not by water, but by silence. Everywhere she stepped, people watched, not out of pity, out of reverence, as if her footprints burned with a light only sorrow could see. Children followed her, not close, not with noise. They walked behind her at dusk, just far enough to pretend they weren't following. One night someone whispered, she leaves fireflies in the mud, and it was true, or felt true, behind her. The water shimmered strangely. Tiny lights blinked in the dark as if the earth itself was grateful for her grief. She didn't speak of the bones again, didn't return to the temple, didn't cry, but every morning she carried a new sack of rice up that same hill. When asked why, she only said, "There are more mouths than ghosts." People began placing offerings along her path. A folded palm leaf, a boiled egg, a single plum blossom, tied with red thread. They never asked her name anymore. They called her things. The Floodwalker, the Grief Mother, the Firefly Trail. Each name was a prayer. Each prayer was a kind of apology for surviving when others did. One evening, a monk lit a lantern by the pagoda steps and waited. When she passed, he said, "I think the gods forgot you." She stopped, not angry, just tired. Then she said something thought would be repeated in poems for decades. "No, the gods remembered me. That's why they made me forget myself." And she kept walking, always walking, not toward anything but away from something that clung like wet cloth. People say, to this day, that if you walked the path to the old pagoda at the right time of year, just after the floods receded, before the first harvest moon, you'll see flickers of light in the mud, tiny, gentle, golden light sand, feel the earth sigh beneath your feet, as if remembering someone you never stopped carrying what the rest of you goes to bury. She never asked for thanks, never bowed, never lingered after her delivery. Every morning she left the same offering, a cloth-wrapped sack of rice, a small ceramic bowl, and a single stick of incense. Then she disappeared into the mist before the monks even woke. One day, the sack arrived without her. No footsteps, no whisper of cloth, just the bowl, perfectly placed on the stone step, still warm from a human hand. The monks waited. A full day, then 2, then 7, she didn't return. They sent someone to her hut. It was empty, no signs of struggle, just a single, carefully made bed, a folded shirt, and beside the fire pit another bowl broken in half, mended with gold. The old art of kintsugi, the beauty of scars revealed. Not hidden, but this was no Japanese treasure. This was the rice woman's final message. In the temple, the monks debated. Should they keep the bowl, place it on the altar, bury it like a relic? In the end, they did what she always did. They placed it on the step. Let the rain wash it. Let the sun dry it. And every day since, the bowl has remained. It never moves, never cracks, never disappears. Children come and leave tiny gifts inside. A wildflower, a coin, a piece of candy wrapped in red foil. No one tells them to. They just know. One child once whispered, "I think it's magic." An elder replied, "No, it's love. And love stays where it's needed." Some nights, when the wind is kind, you can hear something soft, not words, but the rhythm of rice being poured into a bowl. A familiar sound, like hunger meeting hope. They never saw her again. But somehow, she is always there. In the bowl, in the breath between grains, in the silence before someone, Kneels. There was a grove behind the temple, not grand, just bamboo, tall and pale as old bones. It creaked when the wind passed, like doors opening where none should be, the elders said. That's where she sits, when the moon is right. No one dared enter at night, not even the boldest monks. A novice once tried, barefoot. Holding a lantern, he stepped between the stalks. The path closed behind him like a breath. The light dimmed, and somewhere ahead dashed laughter. Not cruel, not joyful, but hollow, as if someone remembered what it felt like to laugh, and wanted to try again. He ran back, but he never forgot the sound. Years later, he'd become the abbot. And he'd say to children on the Festival of Ancestors, "If you hear laughter in the bamboo, don't run. It means someone's story hasn't finished yet." The villagers say the grove began to grow faster after the rice. Woman vanished, taller, thicker, thicker. It creaked louder. Each year, they started tying red threads to the bamboo stalks. Each one for someone lost. Some bore names, some only a date, some nothing at all. But when the wind blew through the grove, those threads danced, as if they knew the names we dared not speak aloud. One old woman whispered, "If you listen long enough, you'll hear her voice in the rustling leaves." And when asked what the voice said, she replied, "It says, I carried him, so you could carry memory." Now, on the 7th night of the 7th month, people gather by the grove. They light lanterns, tie rice grains in silk. Tell stories. They were too afraid to speak when she was alive. They call it the night of carrying, not mourning, not celebration, celebration, just remembrances, quiet and deep as bamboo roots in wet earth, tucked behind the altar, beneath the faded scroll of Umataba's name, was a box, not ornate, not sealed, just old wood fragrant with time, tied shut with rice twine. A monk cleaning the altar found it one morning. He hesitated, then opened it. Inside, a letter, folded with the care of someone who had no one left to send it to. The handwriting was uneven, as if each word weighed more than the last. It began without greeting. There was no funeral, no incense, no chants, only water. And the ache of lifting something to light to be called a body. I tried to scream, but the river swallowed sound, so I walked. 4 days. With bones on my back and silence in my throat, people passed me. They didn't ask, or maybe they did, and I had no language left for reply. I didn't bury him. I placed him where the Buddha could see him, because if no one else could witness our pain, then perhaps the one who sits above suffering might remember us. This is not a confession, nor a prayer, just a refused to die at the end of the letter. No name, just a fingerprint, a smudge of ash. The monk closed the letter, returned it to the box, tied the twine again, and did not speak of it. But from that day forward, he lit an extra candle before each meal, left a bowl of rice at the back of the hall. He never said why. He didn't need to. They say when the wind moves through the temple rafters, you can hear a rustle like paper being unfolded, hands that still remember how to mourn. Beyond the village, beyond even the pagoda, there was a forest. It was not marked on any map. Its trees grew narrow, but tall, as if trying to reach the names heaven had forgotten. The old said it was a place for names, not people, not ghosts, just names. Names that had no graves, no headstones, no one left to remember them out loud. Children were told never to shout in the forest, never to call someone by name, because if the wind caught it, the name would stay, wrapped around the branches, carried through bark and root until the forest beck a mere memory no mouth could own. One evening, a girl ran into the trees after her dog. She returned hours later, silent, pale, holding nothing but a leaf with the word MD carved into it, not by her, not by a knife, but by time. When asked what she saw, she said only, "They're not angry, just waiting to be spoken." The villagers began tying slips of papato, the lowest branches, each with a name. Some were soldiers, some were farmers, some were children lost during the famine, but none were forgotten now. The paper fluttered in the wind, not mournful, but alive. The monks said, "A name rememberatus, a soul with sandals," meaning, it still walks, it still matters, it still answers history calls. And sometimes, when the temple bell rings at dusk, the sound echoes too long, too far, as if someone in the forest is ringing back, answering not, gone, not yet. The villagers never built a shrine for her, not because they forgot, but because shrines are for those who leave. She never left. In the years that followed, people still spoke of her like one might speak of the wind, not seen, but felt in the sway of stalks, in the warmth of morning rice, in the silence that comes before a prayer. A new monk came to the temple, young, educated. He asked, "Where are her ashes?" "Buried." The abbot smiled. The fire never found her. In a quiet room behind the meditation hall, an old brazier still burned, not brightly, just enough each day. Someone came to feed it, a pinch of dried bamboo, a sliver of sandalwood, a few rice grains. No one was assigned, yet the fire never died. It was said, that is where she rests, not in urn or grave, but in that low, constant warmth where rice is steamed, wounds are dressed, and stories begin again. On the 100th anniversary of her first offering, a ceremony was held. No speeches, just bowls of plain rice, a path of lit lanterns, and the sound of footsteps sanding the stone trail to the temple at the top. Children took turns carrying a cloth sack, not heavy, just symbolic, inside nothing but each child, upon lifting it, wept without knowing why. A girl asked the abbot, "Is she still watching?" He knelt beside her and whispered, "Not watching, balking. She walks ahead, so the hungry won't walk alone." As dawn broke, a soft wind rose across the fields, somewhere deep beneath the soil, in the curve of bamboo, in the memory of waterer. Fire curled into rest, not extinguished, just carried by those who remember.